This is Derrick Broze with TCR, and we are here at the Contact in the Desert Conference in Joshua Tree, California. And I'm talking with Michael Tellinger. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent. Nice to be speaking to you.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, first, your work with hidden archaeology, I guess you could say, and your recent discoveries. Tell everybody a little bit about that, what you found in South Africa.
Well, we found what's best described as a vanished civilization that nobody has recognized or identified before. It consists of more than 10 million stone structures, and at closer inspection they turn out to be not dwellings for people or animals, but actually energy generating devices. And then my exploration, my research took me further down the rabbit hole to discover that we're dealing with truly advanced knowledge of technology and the laws of nature and science and physics that we're only starting to understand today. And that's really exciting because it's knocking on the door of the new generation of exploration.
So what distinguishes what you found, these circular structures in South Africa, what distinguishes them from other monoliths that have been discovered? Time period, what exactly is it that makes them different?
Well, what makes them different is that they are unique because of their geographical positioning and the function and the role they played. But I wouldn't say they should be separated from anything else in ancient times on Earth. I believe that all these ancient cultures were very strongly interconnected, and this is what I've been finding is the strong links and connections between this vanished civilization in South Africa and then virtually all other ancient cultures around the world, from the Romans to the Greeks to the Egyptians to the Phoenicians to the Sumerians to the Incas to the Hindus and the Dravidians. And you realize that these ancient civilizations traveled the world and their symbols are scattered everywhere. So there's a very strong connection around the entire planet between all these ancient cultures and the structures they built out of rock. And there was a very specific reason why they built them out of rock. And this is, I think, part of the discovery that I'm sharing with the world, which really has to do with a deeper understanding of technology and the laws of nature, and what I've recently started calling silicon-based technology, a deeper understanding of the true essence of silicon-based technology.
Absolutely. So what are some of the specifics, the anomalies that you found in, say, the temperatures and the magnetic aspects of the stone circles?
Well, we found that virtually all the stone circles, every single one we've measured, so we assume that all of them have the same effect, is they create very strong and powerful electromagnetic fields. They run either horizontally or vertically out of the ground into the sky. And at this stage, we've only measured the movement out of the ground into the sky, which in itself is interesting. And then we measured sound frequencies that are just mind-boggling, coming out of the stone wall, sound frequencies that you shouldn't be measuring in nature, that run into the gigahertz, the tens of gigahertz, and then the hundreds of gigahertz, which I don't think has been measured anywhere else in the world, except at the stone circles and at Adam's calendar in South Africa. So clearly telling us that these are very powerful energy generating devices, and this all seems to come from the earth, from the ground, using the sound of Mother Earth itself, and possibly other things that we haven't discovered yet, but at this stage it seems like it's the sound of Mother Earth generating cymatic patterns upon which the stone circles are placed and created out of rock that resonates and amplifies the sound of Mother Earth, creating very powerful energy generating devices. What's even more spectacular is some of these energy generating devices are built in the shape of magnetrons, and any electrical engineer or anybody who works in electronics or in the field of technology will know what a magnetron is. It's a very powerful energy generating device that is used in laser technology and microwave technology, and we've got giant magnetrons that are 20 meters in diameter that'll probably create more energy based on certain scientists that have shared this with me. One giant magnetron of the kind that we found will generate more energy than all the power plants on Earth today. The problem is we don't just have one of these giant magnetrons, we got thousands of them.
So if we were to speculate a bit, this could suggest some ancient alternative source of energy.
Very much so, it is. We don't need to speculate about it. We've measured it, so it's there. Those that want to argue against it need to come and find some other argument, because the electronic measurements are there, scientific evaluation is there, so we know we have an alternative source of energy, and potentially electricity. We just need to figure out how to work it. I believe now we're getting to the very sensitive subject of energy, electricity, and alternative and new sources of energy. And electricity is just one form of energy, and it's not a good form of energy. It's a bad and destructive form of energy that was imposed on humanity because of money and greed. And that brings us into a whole interesting debate as to why we are enslaved as a species. And electricity and energy, including petroleum energy, is probably the foundation of our enslavement. And one of the most, if not the most, guarded sector of human endeavor and human industry is the energy and electricity industry.
So let's go a little further with that. I believe that your discoveries that you made in South Africa and looking into this energy source led you to exploring those ideas and what enslaves us, and in looking towards solutions as far as freedom. And that led to Ubuntu and Contributionism. Tell everybody a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it was really when I was writing Slave Species of God in 2005, 2004 and 2005, when I realized that, my goodness, there was a time that money didn't exist, that people in ancient civilizations lived for thousands of years without money. They may have used barter and trade, we don't know, we speculate, and then suddenly money makes its appearance very mysteriously and very, very quickly. And I realized that money was introduced to humanity as a synthetic tool of enslavement when the ancient priest kings and the royal bloodlines that were imposed on humanity by the gods, as we learn from the Sumerian texts, when they tell us when the gods came down and appointed the first priest kings from among the people to rule over the people. We realize that we're looking at the beginning of the royal political bloodlines that still run the world today. And these are also the royal political bloodlines that are deeply involved in the banking systems. And you realize that these ancient priest kings were actually the first bankers on earth, and the first banks were the temples that these first priest kings occupied. That's where they issued the money from, and that's where they created the money out of thin air. That's where they created the money in form of clay tablets, and they issued in as the earliest forms of promissory notes and negotiable instruments that today our banking system does on paper. So that made me realize that there's a very special and a distinct, different kind of lifestyle that we can embrace, and that took me to the philosophy of which I called Contributionism in 2005, only to realize that Contributionism is actually very similar to the ancient African philosophy of Ubuntu. So it ended up being Ubuntu Contributionism, in essence taking the ancient philosophy of united communities working together for the greater good of everyone in the community and not individual greed, and applying it to a new society, or to a society today that is enslaved and caught up in a capitalistic system of attaining goods and things and thinking that that's value and that helps humanity. Sorry, I'm being distracted by this. So what Ubuntu and Contributionism really is merging the ancient philosophy with the current lifestyles of people in the world today, with the kind of lives we live, because we can't go from zero to hero. We can't just step out of this life. It's going to be a process of moving step by step out of this enslavement that we find ourselves in, and everyone is equally enslaved. Some people say, well, I'm less enslaved than you, or I'm a free man, or I do this. Well, that's all BS, because they just haven't really thought this thing through. Until we change the entire planet, we'll continue to be equally enslaved. And this is why it's critical that we start creating these Ubuntu contributionist communities as the seeds that create the domino effect and start to consume the capitalistic societies around them. Because what you'll find in my presentation, in my workshops, and in the book, once you have one contributionist community, it is impossible for capitalism and consumerism to survive anywhere near it. Contributionism and Ubuntu devours capitalism and greed and replaces it with abundance and unity.
Could you tell us a little bit about the details of it? I listened to one of your presentations the other day, and you spoke a bit about an individual produces a certain amount, and then there's some amount divided up towards the greater good or towards the community. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, look, one's got to be careful at which point you enter this discussion, right? Because it depends on whether you're talking about the final destination, how it will work in a perfect model of Ubuntu, of a contributionist community, or if we're talking about what do we got to do now to start moving towards that final destination. So in essence, what I suggest is that we start looking at smaller towns and smaller villages, small communities, and converting those into contributionist communities where people work together towards the common purpose and benefit of everyone in that community, starting with basic community projects. And community projects starting with the basics, making sure you've got clean and energized water, that you've got an alternative source of electricity. That is actually the foundation for this contributionist way of existing in a small community. And I use the energy because once you can provide a community with an alternative source of electricity, and you take control of that, of the delivery of that electricity, as opposed to people paying for the current source of electricity, you've got the foundation for a perfect contributionist model. And the reason for that is that you can leverage the electricity to everyone in the community in response for them contributing towards receiving the electricity. So you can say everyone in our town can have free electricity as of Monday next week. All you got to do is give us 3 hours a week in any one of the community projects that we create. How do you create the community projects? Well, you now have a source of electricity. So you can start a dairy, you can start a bakery, you can have a metal factory and a wood factory and sort out the sewage plant. You can recycle all the stuff, all the rubbish. You can, once you got an alternative source of electricity, you have the foundation for a whole new socio-economic structure. And nobody is going to refuse a free, uncapped supply of electricity. Everyone is going to put their hand up and say, yeah, I want that free electricity. And all they have to do is work for 3 hours a week in one of those community projects, after which they then do and follow their own passion and their love and their true God-given talents and their skills for the benefit of everyone in the community, whether they're a shoemaker or a rocket scientist or a winemaker or a musician or a sculptor or a bridge builder. It doesn't matter. They'll want to do something that they're good at and passionate about. So what in essence then happens is that, and this is why you realize it is such a beautifully intricate and completely interwoven system, because what happens is what you first identify as community projects, that are the obvious community projects, the food, the dairy, and so forth. You start realizing that everything you do as an expert bridge builder suddenly becomes a community project, because all the kids that participate in the alternative education system, learning true skills for life, will go to learn the true skills for life from the experts and the master builders and the master shoemakers and the master rocket scientists and the master food growers will learn their skills for life from these master experts in the community. And that becomes the education system that creates really well-balanced young adults at the age of 16 who know how to build a rocket and how to bake a bread and how to milk a cow and how to build a bridge and how to do everything and anything. Why? Because they've done it from the earliest of age. They don't have to read it from a book. They'll actually know how to do it.
Absolutely.
So this is how you create a community from various earliest of ages, where people know exactly what their skills and talents are and what they're going to be contributing towards the community. And you don't have to have a synthetic education system that's forced down your throat. So just to take you back to the community projects and the 3 hours a week, in the beginning I thought that everybody's going to have to contribute X amounts of hours a day, and I'm beginning to think, if you start really look at the model, it's becoming more and more evident that 3 hours a week is probably all that's going to be necessary for people to contribute to one of the community projects, if everything people do becomes a community project. Because imagine a town of 1,000 people, that's 3,000 hours a week. 3,000 hours a week. No municipality or town council can afford to pay 3,000 people a weekly salary to come and work in one of their municipal projects, but the people can do it for themselves. So 3,000 hours of labor a week, you'll have too much food, too many mushrooms, too much milk, too much cheese, too many loaves of bread, too many bridges, too many free energy devices, because that's what people will be doing. and suddenly realize, oh my God, this is the abundance that I'm talking about, the abundance that a moneyless society creates. It devours capitalism, it breaks it down at its fundamental structure and replaces it with a moneyless society united in cooperation for the benefit of all, producing abundance on every level imaginable.
Absolutely. I really do appreciate the ideas behind it, and I understand it's still a developing philosophy.
Yeah.
That, like you said, we can start at the beginning of how these ideas get out, or we can start at an end goal. What might this utopian contributionist society look like?
Yeah.
And I personally consider myself to be a voluntarist, which simply means I believe in a voluntary society, and that there should be no aggression between individuals, and everybody should be free to do what they want as long as they're not violating somebody else's right to do the same.
Yeah.
And along with that, I believe in the idea of creating whatever our solution is, because obviously we can agree that the status quo is not where we want to be. We're moving towards something better. The idea being that we could have several coexisting societies or communities, one maybe choosing to be contributionist, one choosing to still remain capitalist, or one with more socialist leanings. Under contributionism, you mentioned a couple of times how this could lead to the end of capitalism. If you see this growing, do you see it still allowing for other communities of other types?
I've thought about that, and ask yourself this. You've got a choice. You can come live in our community, where you wake up in the morning and you do what you love to do. And for 3 hours a week, you go and work in one of the community projects. And that also becomes your education, actually. So you're constantly learning new things, new skills. You're constantly contributing towards the greater being of your whole community. And you participating and having a great time with everyone else in your community. And in return, you can have anything. You have access to everything and anything in your entire community. So would you want to stay in that community, or would you want to go back to a community where you have to wake up in the morning, sit in the traffic, go work for some lousy company where they pay you a salary, and then at the end of 12 years of service they say we don't need you anymore, and they kick you out, and now you're going to have to go look for another job. In the meantime, you've been kicked out of your house or your apartment, or the bank repossesses your house because you haven't paid your mortgage. You want to live in that society? Why do you want to live in that society?
I can definitely see the differences and the benefits of a contribution society, but let's say that others who are also working to move past that, the mundane, typical mainstream life. We don't want to work in those 9-to-5 jobs anymore. We want to find something that's more meaningful. And what you're describing as far as the community projects kind of reminds me of the unschooling movement, where children are taught with direct life experiences. So what I just to play devil's advocate here, I know that there are tons, and probably within the audience, people who come to this information because they're looking for positive solutions away from central authority and away from the current paradigm, which is top-down hierarchy, central control. So in a contributionist society, what would be that mechanism to run the projects? Who would be that authority?
Yeah, it's a very good and a very important question, because sometimes when people first hear about this, they think, oh, you're talking about a lawless society, it's just a free-for-all, and that's not the case. In fact, a world without money and absolute freedom actually requires absolute control of your own activities, control of your own responsibility, taking account, self-governance. So it's actually a higher consciousness philosophy that allows people to tap into those deeper areas of their self-awareness, and realizing how they affect all those others around them. And so you'll see when you look in the Ubuntu Contributionism book, it spells very clearly that this can't happen unless you have a governing council, which we call the Council of Elders, in the community. That's the foundation to start an Ubuntu Contributionism community. So, and this is what we're doing in our town. We are actually putting together what we call a Council of Elders. 13 people, 12 around one, the Christ consciousness principle. So, Christ and his 12 disciples, and these 12 people that are appointed by the people in the community, the most trusted, respected, and honored people in the community, that know that the people basically nominate, because they know they will look after everybody's interest and not their own personal interest at the expense of everyone else. So this Council of Elders become then the decision makers and the voice, the single voice for the rest of the community. And that becomes a very important point of departure. If you still live in a capitalistic community and you've got to probably pick up problems with the existing town council or municipality that you may have to confront at some stage on certain issues, that they will ignore if they're talking one-to-one. If I go to the town council and complain about something, I'm speaking as a single voice against the whole town council, municipality, politicians, right? So this way we reverse the situation, and if the council of elders and the representative of the council of elders goes to raise a problem with the municipality, they're then speaking on behalf of everyone in your community, and that changes the balance of power completely. Suddenly the people in the town assume the control through the one voice phenomenon.
So do you see this, let's say the Council of Elders, or just the idea of working communities, in my own personal thinking of how can we create this more, I don't want to say utopian, but a more peaceful world where everyone is in control of their own destiny? It seems like there may almost be some natural state of being where we can have this big of a community, but after a certain point it gets too big or too corrupt, or have you addressed that issue?
Yeah, I have, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but that's a good answer, because I can't lay down the rules for that. The community itself will lay down the rules for that. The Council of Elders will decide, listen, our community has become too big. We need to create a new community. So let's find a place over there and start to create a new community so that they can start creating that, because it's getting too big and too out of control. So you see, this is why I call it a self-correcting system. I've got some of the key answers. I've got some of the key suggestions and solutions for some of the big problems that we face in our current system. That if we implement that, we'll start moving rapidly towards this kind of lifestyle. But I don't have all the answers, and the answers will come out of the Council of Elders and the people in the community themselves, because that's what happens. It breaks down the current centralized government structure to people governing themselves in their own communities, because that's ultimately what we want to do, isn't it? Well, the government has no bloody idea what's going on in my town, in my community, and they're trying to tell us from a central government what we should be doing in our towns.
More localization.
Yeah, this is why the Council of Elders, their job is on an hour by hour, day by day, to make decisions. So you can go to them now, and then within an hour from now, a decision is made that we will put a gate over there because all the livestock is running out and drowning in the river. So it's important to put a gate there, and we've decided to do that. And so you don't have to fill in a form and do all this, nonsense and red tape and all the bureaucracy that holds back humans. It holds back humanity. It restricts life. It restricts fundamental freedoms on every level.
I do agree with you. I mean, for one, I love the ideas. I'm glad that you are pushing these out there and you see that they're getting more attention, because I think it's not going to be one idea from Michael Tellinger or from Derrick Broze. It's going to be humanity coming together and saying, hey, we've got these varying ideas, how can we make them work together? And maybe in one part of the country or the world, contributionism will take off and it'll work well for there, and maybe another part of the world, they feel like they're going to adopt some other ideas, because I truly believe moving towards any sort of centralized global system will not work towards a solution. We'll end up bad, whether it's contributionism or another form of democracy or not. And I also agree with you that we do have to move towards a higher conscious plane for something like this to work, because also my own beliefs of self-governance, more which you could call anarchy, which is literally just everybody ruling themselves but voluntarily coming together for a community project. There's a lot of common ground there, but I also understand that the place we are now, that not everybody is ready to take responsibility for themselves, to become self-reliant and willing to to cooperate with other people. So
exactly,
I think that's going to take a while.
And that is a consequence of capitalism, because you see, capitalism is very successfully, in so-called democracy, has been very, very successful in breaking people and humanity down into always looking outside of themselves for guidance, for leadership, for someone's going to solve this problem for me and that problem, and someone's going to provide that and provide. Instead of saying, no, I'm the guy that's providing this towards the community, and my partners and my friends and my colleagues and the fellow members of my community, we are the people that are providing all the solutions towards our community. We don't have to look out to anyone, and this is why I don't see any other system surviving as soon as there is one truly contributionist community. And the reason I say this is very obvious, and once you go through the step-by-step thinking about it. So imagine my little town of Watervalboven, where we've already started initiating this process, right? We're putting a council of elders together. We've identified the community projects, which includes a dairy, a fish farm, a bakery, food growing, a wood factory, a metal factory, recycling the rubbish creating a food kitchen for the elderly, the homeless, the AIDS orphans, and so forth. So once you got this going, and all these community projects are working, and we've got an alternative electricity supply, by the way, which we're about to install very, very soon. So we've taken control of our community. Now we're creating all this fish, all the milk, all the butter, all the bread for free, right? Virtually for free. So which means that once we've consumed what we need, and remember that the contributionist philosophy is based on the Holy Trinity principle, always. It's not a self-contained system. It's an open system. Energy flows through it. So you create more than you need. So you create 3 times as much as your community needs. Why? Because once you've consumed the 1/3 that your community needs to survive, you make the other 2/3 available to all the communities around you.
Is that a requirement of being
Absolutely.
part of the contributionist
Absolutely.
society?
Because otherwise you're creating a closed system which will eventually suffocate itself. That's why in the world all the self-sustained communities that you'll find are closed systems. They're not open systems. And ask any scientist or physicist, they'll tell you that closed systems do not work. They collapse. It has to be an open system. Energy must flow through it and must create abundance. It must be a scalar
Does
technology.
contributionism still value the individual in the community, or does the individual become beholden to the greater good?
That's a very good question. Many people believe. I want to come back to that, but I want to first tell you why it will consume the capitalism. So once you create the 1/3 and you make the other 2/3 available for a fraction of the price, you put a price on it, because you can't create a system of dependency to the other communities around you, because otherwise they'll just come and take it. So now what you make your milk and your bread available, instead of $3, it's $1, right? And suddenly all the people from the neighboring communities will come to you to buy their milk, their bread, get everything they need. So they'll be benefiting you with money, so your community will be growing financially rich, because you're making this stuff virtually for free. So all this money is going to the community pool, and you're getting more and more money every week, every month from all the neighboring communities. But what you're doing, you're destroying their capitalistic model. Their dairies, their bakeries, their engineering firms, and their rocket scientists are going to go out of business, and they're going to collapse, because all the neighboring communities are going to come to you to get their stuff. So can you see, it's impossible for a capitalistic system to survive anywhere near a contributionist society. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. So you might want to force a capitalistic system there. The people are going to abandon it and run away.
They see a better option than
Absolutely. They're not going to continue. And very soon, they're going to say, listen, we can't keep going to Watervalboven to buy our bread and our milk. We need to start here, what they've done over there. So very quickly, they're going to copy the contributionist system where they are, because they don't necessarily want to move. And this is why it becomes the domino effect. That first contributionist community is the first domino that will start the domino effect, and once it goes, it's unstoppable.
Well, I definitely enjoy the ideas. Could you address the individual versus the community?
Yeah, individual. There can be no more individual freedom in any other system than you get in contributionist society, because in fact I call it the minority rule principle in my book. I did that sort of jokingly, sort of provoking the people that are still in a majority rule kind of, because that's
Democracy.
just exactly democracy. Majority rule philosophy is just a bullying tactic, right? There's more of us
Mob
than
rule.
there's mob rule. There's 51 of us and 49 of you. It'll be our way or the highway, right? And that's no good. So a minority rule principle basically says that in a moneyless society and in a contributionist system where everything is available to everyone all the time, because that's how it's developed, minorities, no matter how minute that minority will be, all their needs will be taken care of to the best of the possible ability of that minority. Doesn't matter whether they guys that go look for tiny little bugs on trees of one specific bug, that minority group will be taken care of. Or guys that make ribbons, or a group that makes ribbons for cakes, or who knows what. Every minority will be taken care of as long as it benefits the community. So it becomes a minority rule philosophy, rather than we'll take care of the majority and screw the minorities.
So the only freedom that one might be lacking in a contributionist society is the freedom to say, I want to own everything I created.
Yeah, you can't own everything you created. You can create it for yourself, but you'll be creating it for everybody else, because there's no money, so the word ownership doesn't exist. So do
you believe that people own the fruits of their labor?
You're not going to own the fruits of your labor. You're going to create the fruits of your labor for everyone else to benefit from, and you're not going to be the only one. So in a contributionist society, you're not going to be the only shoemaker. There are going to be many shoemakers, because you no longer have shoe factories where people work as slaves, slave labor for 10 cents on the hour in slave camps in China and importing it here. You're going to have people making shoes so everything in a contributionist community actually is tailor-made. It's custom-made for you. Where in a capitalistic society, I can't afford to have custom-made shoes. They cost $5,000 for a bloody pair of custom-made shoes, you know? Or a tailor that makes custom-made clothes for me, I can't afford that. I have to go and buy clothes off a shelf. That's what capitalism has done to us. It stops us from getting, the best.
So
prevents us
you
from getting the
incentivize
best.
people by promoting the idea that, well, you're not the only one providing for everyone.
Yeah.
So okay, I'm fine with creating a little more than just for myself, because I
Yeah.
know that Joe down the street and Mary are also making an abundance that I will benefit from.
Yeah, but remember that you're making shoes, and you're only going to be doing this for 3 hours a day. And that becomes part of the community project. The shoe, and you and the other shoemakers then become the community project as well. So you'll have people coming to you helping and learning the skills of how to make shoes. And you're not going to be the only one. But there'll be one master shoemaker that the community decides is the master shoemaker. So the kids that want to learn how to make shoes will probably go and learn it from the master shoemaker, while all the others are still making shoes, but maybe not as masterfully as that one particular individual. That'll all be sorted out by the community in any case. Okay, so again, it's a self-correcting system. It'll correct itself for the best outcome of the needs for the people. If we need more shoemakers, then we're going to say, hell, geez, the guys are struggling. They're working 6 hours a day now, where they should only be working for 3 hours a day, and that's not acceptable. Okay.
One more comment on that. We both have discussed the idea of moving humanity to a higher plane where we can get past the problems that we're currently dealing with in the status quo. Scarcity seems to be something you're trying to address here.
Yeah.
If we continue to evolve, so we evolve to a state where people say, you know what, I think I would rather create an abundance, a surplus for my brother and my sister here in the community, and then we continue to evolve to a point of self-governance, wouldn't that ultimately make the Council of Elders moot? If everyone becomes self-governing and conscious enough to rule themselves, where we no longer need any government at all?
I don't have an answer for that right now. I think the community will decide.